I ran until I was out of breath, until the cold night air pierced my lungs with every gasp. I looked up at the clear night sky, whose only friend was a yellow crescent moon. I don't think I'd ever made it so deep into the forest before. I'd been warned to never venture deep, as many children had become lost. But being lost was a far cry better than being home and dealing with him. His drunken threats hurt worse than any of the physical abuse I'd endured before. I couldn't return home. I stumbled blindly for an hour or so before I heard the faint song of frogs. The winding forest faded away, revealing a pond whose surface was covered in a brilliant green algae. My legs had finally given way to exhaustion. I collapsed onto the base of the nearest tree and slept.
Who are you, child?
A voice unlike anything I'd ever heard before, like a whispering that both soothed and chilled me to the bone. I sat up, panicked, and trying to gain footing, I wrapped my legs in some unknown fabric and tripped well before I made 2 steps. I turned immediately to free my legs. There, I found what had been impeding my escape. A black cloak bound my feet, and attached to it was something most peculiar. A black skull. What looked to be of a deer, wrapped full in a tattered cloak. A hilt of a knife lay buried at its center. Atop its head sat antlers that twisted and curved, forming an unearthly crown. Moss and vines contoured every facet of its mass, which further held it to the tree. It didn't move, nor show any other signs of life. Then it spoke again.
Who are you, child?
The disembodied voice nearly gave me a heart attack. I tried to steady my voice and reply. I'm Sarah. Was I losing my mind? It wasn't possible that this thing could be speaking to me. Maybe staying out all night had driven me insane. Maybe I had succumbed to hypothermia, and these were the last minutes before my death. His voice rocked me out of my existential crisis and back to my perceived reality.
And why are you here, Sarah?
His voice had an earnest tone. It made me lightheaded, dizzy. I was chased from my home.
Why?
My father threatened to kill me. I saw what I thought was a glimmer of light out of one of the eye sockets.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm the Elf King. If you remove this knife, I may be able to help you with your problem.
The knife? Would removing it cause this creature to pop up and come to life? Would it even hold true to its word and help me? A small piece of me wanted to see what would happen, but it was outweighed by my sense of dread. Seeing the impossible happen would be too much for my already fragile mind to handle. I can't. The creature sat for a minute, unmoving, silent.
If you change your mind, I'll be here.
It was almost twilight. Having nowhere else to return, I was forced to head home. It was night when I arrived. There on the porch sat my drunk of a father, whiskey bottle in hand.
Where were you little brat?
His breath reeked of booze. In the woods, I replied. He stood from the porch, but lost his footing, catching himself the handrail. His bloodshot eyes glared at me with contempt.
I bet you think that's pretty funny, huh?
Yeah! Funny how pathetic you've become! Without missing a beat, He hurled the bottle at my head. I evaded it easily enough, just to watch it smash through his passenger side window of his pickup.
Just you wait. I'll get my .45 and make short work of you.
I ran through endless woods until the soles of my feet bled, until tears blinded my vision. This time the fear of certain death outweighed the fear of the Elf King and his promise. The fear of the unknown. As if guided by an unseen hand, I reached down and grasped the hilt, pulling it as hard as I could. I felt the blade loosen from the tree. With one last pull, I fell backwards and hit my head on a root. In my last waning moments of consciousness, I could see the unmistakable crown of the Elf King rise. A new morning had come. I sat up. The Elf King was gone without a trace. I made an uneasy journey back to the house. This time I imagined I'd call the police and tell them the entire story. But I was too late. There were already police cars and an ambulance at my house. My father was absent from his usual spot on the porch.